They called him too old to matter, a fading remnant of a political lineage that once set the nation's pulse, a man whose voice he weathered by time, battles, and the weight of historia was routinely dismissed as irrelevant in an age obsessed with novelty. Yet on that dim afternoon in the fraying Civic Park where only a modest, half-interested crowd had gathered beneath swirling gray clouds, Robert Bobby Kennedy Jr. stepped onto the makeshift stage with the slow, deliberate steadiness of someone who had learned not to rush moments that mattered, and from the instant his hand curled around the chipped wooden podium, a curious hush fell over the restless onlookers. This event had been expected to amount to little more than a blip on a local calendar, a filler appearance at a community gathering that organizers assumed would end with a few polite nods and a scattering of early departures, especially because younger attendees, arms crossed, headphones slung around their necks, whispered among themselves that the old man had nothing left to offer, that his time was over, that relevance was reserved for the bold youth of a modern generation. But as Kennedy lifted his gaze and swept it over the patchwork of faces, students fatigued by uncertainty, parents juggling unseen burdens, elders worn by the passage of years, something shifted, almost imperceptible but unmistakable, as if the air itself recognized that what was about to be spoken would linger long after the storm clouds drifted away. He started quietly, acknowledging with surprising calm that he had been called many things lately: old, outdated, past his prime, a man clinging to memories from an era that no longer existed. But then, with the firmness that grew with each syllable, he said that age had never been the thing that weakened people. What truly weakened them was the belief that they no longer had anything to contribute. For a moment the crowd didn't cheer, didn't applaud, they simply listened, drawn in by a voice that carried both fire and fragility. Even the teenagers who had lifted their phones to record ironically now lowered them slightly, caught off guard by the sincerity threading through his words. Kennedy spoke not with the polished cadence of a seasoned politician but with the raw honesty of someone who had watched countless people rise after being told they never would, someone who understood that hope was not the exclusive property of youth but the inheritance of anyone willing to hold on to it. As he recounted moments from his past, the failures seen up close, victories tasted only after staggering setbacks, the sky above seemed to pause in its threat of rain, and a single break in the clouds allowed a muted ribbon of sunlight to illuminate the stage just as he leaned in and delivered the line that would soon echo far beyond the boundaries of that park: if you still have breath, you still have power. If you still have power, you still have purpose. And if you still have purpose, a broken bar, then none of USA are done yet. A sentence so elemental and unguarded that it hit the crowd with the force of recognition, as though each listener suddenly remembered something they had forgotten about themselves. The park erupted first in scattered applause, then in a rolling wave of cheers that drowned out the wind. Kennedy didn't smile triumphantly or bask in the reaction. He simply stepped back with the quiet dignity of someone who had said what needed to be said. Within hours, the recording of that moment began spreading online, at first passed around by local attendees, then picked up by strangers who felt the message seep into them like warmth after a long winter, and soon it surged across platforms, accumulating not just views but conversations, confessions, and renewed commitments. Older viewers posted it with pride, saying they felt seen again. Parents shared it as a reminder to keep going. Young adults who had grown used to numbness wrote, "I didn't expect this to make me feel anything, but it did." Commentators dubbed the moment everything from an unexpected spark to the revival no one saw coming, but those labels barely grazed the truth. Invitations flooded in from universities, podcasts, and civic groups, not out of nostalgia for a famous name but out of hunger for the message he carried: that relevance is not measured in youth but in courage, and that purpose is not something granted but something claimed. Yet Kennedy himself offered only a single, understated reflection afterward: "I didn't say anything new. I just reminded people of what they already know but forget when life gets loud." In the days that followed, his words became a quiet anthem. Teachers wrote them on chalkboards, workers taped them to their lockers, students scribbled them into notebooks, families placed them on fridge doors. The sentence "if you still have breath, you still have power" appeared on protest signs, community bulletin boards, self-help forums, and late-night posts from people trying to climb out of their own shadows. And gradually, the world began to understand why that moment mattered so profoundly, not because an aging figure proved he wasn't finished, but because he showed everyone listening that they weren't finished either, that strength isn't a privilege reserved for the unscarred, that purpose doesn't retire, that hope doesn't diminish with age but often grows deeper, steadier, more enduring. So although the park that day was small and the audience scattered, although the stage was weather-worn and the man who spoke bore every line etched by time, what he sparked stretched far beyond the boundaries of that fleeting afternoon. It became not simply a speech but a reminder carved softly and powerfully into a weary generation's heart that no voice is too old to matter, no life too weathered to ignite change, and no person truly done as long as there is breath left to speak, to stand, to strive and to believe.